Sure. So the way that it worked, and I'll tell you the inspiration, it's because I grew up in the country, but then I moved to the city once I became an adult. And so I'm definitely a city boy, even though I was raised in the country. But I figured I'd never have the opportunity to learn from grandmasters or anything like that. But now that streaming has come along, the access that we have to these experts, it's absolutely unprecedented. And my favorite one of the bunch by far is the number one ranked American. He's number 2 in the world, or at least he was until these last candidates. His name's Hikaru Nakamura. And and so I watched him, and he'll do live streams while he's playing chess, and he'll be reading chat in between moves, and he'll be reacting. And then, I like to make the joke in my content about how, I'm from the internet. And part of being from the internet is having a very high tolerance.
Welcome to the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Kidd, where every week we dive deep into conversations with real estate pros, business owners, and maritime professionals about their mindset and journey to success. Please help support us on our journey and our channel by liking, subscribing, and commenting below so we can help you in your journey to success.
How you doing today? Scott Kidd, the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast. I got my friend here, Dan Fradenburgh, here of Chess with Investors. How you doing today, Dan?
I'm fantastic. It's always great to talk to you, Scott. It's nice because with your profession, I always feel fancy when I talk to you, which is nice.
Well, that's definitely a compliment I've never heard before. Feeling fancy talking to me. That's one thing that doesn't usually go along with me is fancy, but that's okay. I'll take it. So we talked a little while ago, and tell us a little more about. For people that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about you and your podcast, Chess with Investors.
Sweet. So I got into real estate coming from the CRM space. I had an agency that I opened up in 2011, and as I started to find bigger and better clients, eventually all roads lead to real estate. And one of the things that's a little bit unusual about me from, like how I look and all that sort of stuff, is that I actually lived in Taiwan for 15 years. I've spoken Mandarin every single day for over 20 years now. And basically, some of the real estate tech help that I did was while I was still living over there in Taiwan. And so I learned how to flip houses, but I didn't really pull the trigger because I knew that I was sort of asking for trouble, being on the other side of the world. It's pretty easy to take advantage of somebody in that kind of situation, right? But when he started looking at apartment buildings, I started to think, hey, there's something I can do from the internet. And so I got into personal branding and trying all different things that I think a lot of people are afraid to tread. Basically finding out like how can you really make an impact? How do you cut through the noise when everybody's saying similar things? Everybody's trying to, get a reaction or whatever like that. But it's been pretty good, and Chess with Investors, I'd say, is the culmination of that because it's got much better viewership than the others. But of course, I still have others that are going on, like the Figure It Out Dream Job series, which your episode will be released quite soon by the looks of it.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, that's the Figure It Out is a nice play on words that a lot of times that's just what we have to do. But is on your Chess with Investors, it takes quite a while sometimes to go through a whole game of chess. So I would imagine
there's ways around that.
Walk me through a little bit of that. That sounds pretty interesting.
Sure. So the way that it worked, and I'll tell you the inspiration, it's because I grew up in the country, but then I moved to the city once I became an adult. And so I'm definitely a city boy, even though I was raised in the country. But I figured I'd never have the opportunity to learn from grandmasters or anything like that. But now that streaming has come along, the access that we have to these experts, it's absolutely unprecedented. And my favorite one of the bunch by far is the number one ranked American. He's number 2 in the world, or at least he was until these last candidates. His name's Hikaru Nakamura. And Yeah, and so I watched him, and he'll do live streams while he's playing chess, and he'll be reading chat in between moves, and he'll be reacting. And then, I like to make the joke in my content about how, I'm from the internet. And part of being from the internet is having a very high tolerance for the bizarre, like non sequiturs, just stuff that's just like, why, right? It's basically, of course, about Florida Man, so you guys get plenty.
Yeah.
You guys get both.
Florida Man,
right?
He's a popular guy. He does a lot of cool stuff.
Well, it really impresses all of his friends, right? So anyway, so he'd be sitting there talking while playing this cerebral game where you're supposed to, concentrate like crazy, and he's just blowing them off the board while he's multitasking. And so I already had a couple of different podcasts, and I know that part of running a show, especially if it's a live event like a summit or something like that I've got a lot of experience from that, even from back when I was in college. I did the sound and lights for all the bigger events because I'd already been a guitar teacher for a few years by the time I got to college. And so because of that, I always had to run on multiple tracks at the same time. And so multitasking isn't that big of a deal. But on the show, I had people on, and this is after I had almost 400 episodes of Chance Encounters, which was where I'm just interviewing commercial real estate investors and finding out what's your buy box, what's your core competency you're looking to contribute, get some sort of vibe from them as far as, like what's going to make them quit, what's going to keep them around, like do they have the level of sophistication that you need to take them on as an investor or as a potential partner on a GP team. That's what the Chance Encounters was all about. But when it came over to Chess with Investors, I'm like, okay, well, this is a slam dunk. Instead of being so formal and asking every single big question I need to know about your investment habits and what you're doing in the space, instead we can, get a good feel for each other, but play a game of chess at the same time, where, that was one of the things that was nice about finding out people's buy boxes inside an interview. It's to figure out, it's like, okay, well, who's actually, like playing it straight, and who's trying to get a little bit cute with the rules and compliance and those sorts of things. And when you're playing chess against somebody, you learn lots of things, like how much perseverance they have, which is huge in real estate. How resourceful are they? Like the people who just give up, those are the ones who I think you don't really want to be investing with, and you don't want to be partnering with. And so finding those things out and having that deeper relationship and that kind of fun is important. And then the other thing too is just I personally like to work with people who've got a lot going on upstairs, because I feel like they're less likely to be blindsided by more or less predictable things. Like weather is a thing, insurance is a thing, taxes is a thing, utilities are a thing. So that's basically where that came from. And the nice thing about chess, if you're playing online like we do during the interview, you have a clock as well. So
Blueprint, the passive investor due diligence checklist. You found a deal, the returns look great. But before you wire a single dollar, do you know what you're really investing in? Most passive investors skip the hard questions. No PPM review, no sponsor vetting, no exit strategy. They hope for the best. Blueprint fixes that. For pillars of protection, 87 plus vetting questions, a live scoring dashboard that gives you an instant verdict. Invest, caution, or avoid. Work through each tab. Note your red flags. Review your score. Decide with confidence, not gut feeling.
So we play 15-minute matches with 10-second increments. So that means that each player has 15 minutes, and every time you make a move, you get a bonus 10 seconds. If all of that time runs out, you lose, even if you were winning. So that's how that works. But yeah, I've got a son who, he's the reason why I started taking chess so seriously. He's actually competing in the nationals next month. So I'm really excited about him doing that. He's turning 13 this year. And
wow.
Exactly. And so because he's a Gen Alpha technically. And so obviously he likes the faster paced chess. So he likes to play bullet chess. He likes to play 1 minute chess where each side has 1 minute. And so it's almost more about, forcing your opponent to think rather than actually making great moves. And so since I would play with him and I play, a little bit slower formats like Blitz, that's why if I've got 15 minutes, that's ages.
Wow, that's That's pretty. Sounds like the 1 minute. That sounds intense. Even 15 minutes sounds pretty intense. Because I mean, I've played. I used to play chess quite a bit, but I haven't played in probably decades, maybe at least 10 years. But I mean, when my kids were younger, we played a bit. But I could imagine, just that's a lot of pressure to get that move in, and you got to move, or you run out. If you run out of time, then you've lost as well. So you can't take too much time. That's because I watched this show over the weekend on Netflix. It was about some big chess scandal, and it was about a guy that might have been cheating or could have been cheating.
Yeah. Hans Niemann was the one you're talking about, and Magnus Carlsen was the one who walked out. You also saw Hikaru Nakamura in that Netflix special.
I saw him. That's where I remember the name, but they did all those algorithms, and they said that he wasn't cheating.
Right, over the board, yes, but
over the board.
Right, but there was definitely a lot of evidence when he was around 16 of cheating on up to around 100 games.
Online or
online, exactly, and that was for moneyed tournaments, which that's a sort of next level of
that's
behavior.
Kind of fraud and kind of stealing and stuff like that. I guess that was a pretty interesting thing, but I can only imagine just you see those masters doing that, and like as a real estate investor, like doing that, but it's a good qualifier. I could see it, you can see somebody's actual character, when, because a lot of the big parts of in syndications or investing in funds or, in commercial real estate is investing with the team. And you get to know a lot about someone by the way they play games or play chess, because chess is a very well thought out game and match. So that's interesting. But did you just, I guess because you've always liked chess and you like real estate, you just kind of
threw them together. Yeah, that's a big part of it. And of course, I'm trying to do some transitions now. I'd really love to have you on Chess with Investors as well, since you know how. But I'm trying to make it where it's a little bit less like. So back to the honesty thing and how that comes back to chess. One of the other things that comes out is that I really hit the books hard because I'd say, I don't know, I'd say about 3 years ago, my son, he was starting to be more than a 50-50. Like he was beating me more often than I was beating him. And I needed to show him that if you're going to be competitive at something, the people out there are absolutely obsessed. They are going to put in so much more work than you're going to be willing to do it. And if you're a kid, you've never seen that before. So I had to be that guy. So I hit the books big time. I took a couple lessons from a grandmaster. I bought a whole bunch of courses. I bought the software that grandmasters do to prepare for against each other. So I did all of those different things to do that. And one of the other nice things in the context of honesty is I at least got to the point where if somebody can beat me at chess, there's no denying that they put serious time into the game. And if they're denying it, then something's up with this guy. Now, of course, I haven't had that yet, but people tend to have pretty big egos, and it tends to show up in that sort of circle with the game of chess. Absolutely. So that's what I was up to. And the other thing too, and this probably isn't the nicest thing to say in the world, but I think that this diagnosis, I think it's got a few more judgments against it than it really ought to. And I'm talking about ADHD. And I do notice that when it comes to entrepreneurs, I don't think it's just real estate. ADHD is sort of running rampant. And I'm not sure if it's, I'm going to use another term that's not so great, if it's the unemployable aspect. So they have to talk to their family and build some sort of business because they just cannot hold down a job for any meaningful amount of time. But if it is true that these entrepreneurs frequently have ADHD, then a couple of talking heads is not going to cut it. You need something else to grab their attention. And so that's what I was hoping for, is that, if you don't like the conversation, you'll stay for the chess. And if you don't like the chess, you'll stay for the conversation.
Yeah, and chess is not something like, to allude to what we were saying, it's not something where you can just naturally be good at it. And like commercial real estate too, is you can't just be naturally good at it. You have to play the games. You have to do the 10,000 hours or whatever, or however many it takes. Like some people can probably do it in 1,000, some people can do it. But, that is a pretty big tell that if somebody it beats you, that they've put a lot of time into it, because you've put a lot of time into it.
Right,
it's
exactly.
not something you pick up. Same thing with the whole real estate being successful. Anyone that's successful in it, they've been doing it over years, possibly decades. Not just they picked it up, they flipped a couple houses, made a few $1,000,000. No, they probably did a lot more than that. They might make it seem a lot easier than it was, to make, like you said, with the ego kind of thing,
Right. Exactly. And of course, those guys, they definitely have a course that you can buy for the low price of.
Yeah. The one thing that I always liked was the guys that have the course that don't own any real estate, and they have a high dollar coaching program as well. I mean, because I have a course, but it's a small course, but it's more to like see who's serious and wants to stay in, or just wants my advisory or what have you, or consulting or what have you. I'm not getting wealthy by any means to sell a bunch of courses or anything like that. It's just to really active, and just to see where the alignment of interest is. And I guess that's, in one way, that's probably what you're doing with the chess, you're kind of using that as a tool to align your interests and see where you fall, because you can learn a lot about a person from chess, especially.
Yes, that's definitely true. But one of the bigger parts is that because I'm focused on the internet side of it, so I'm not in like Miami or something like that, where you don't have to go that far to find somebody who would be interested in buying part of a building. Like if you're casting that kind of wide net, the conversion takes longer. There's all sorts of different issues. So I'm also trying to build.
Most investors don't know where they stand. Introducing Invest with Scott Kidd. Get your personalized investment readiness score. Multifamily real estate builds wealth through cash flow. You'll receive your readiness score, a personalized strategy. Join over 500 investors. Discover if you're ready. Start your free assessment today.
Build trust at the same time. And one of the examples of why you absolutely have to have some study time, and why I really like what you're saying about the course that you have to get people on board with what exactly you're in for when you're involved in real estate. I did some similar things. Of course, I got my ridiculous hat, says realestateisascam.com. I ended up buying that because I saw it was available at the regular price. I'm like, oh, wow, well, I'm sure somebody's going to be Googling, and I'm very happy to take that traffic. So I built that page, that site, and I wrote a book to go with it. And one part in the book, Real Estate is a Scam, that I focus on, that I know is part of your entire process in your course, is that if you watch, for example, Shark Tank, you're going to get this certain impression that all you have to do is talk to a wealthy person and say, hey, this is my business, and then you can get them on as an investor. That's not how it works at all. There's an entity, an agency called the SEC, and you're publicly soliciting. You're not an accredited investor. You haven't filed for your exemption. So you can't just go ahead and pitch people your deals. And, especially if you don't know their actual, you have to have proof of their level of sophistication, appetite for risk, financial situation, this, that, and the other thing. Or you have to do a 506C, and then they have to be accredited. So
And plus, it's just very intrusive just to run up on somebody and just regurgitate out the deal that you have. It might be great for you, but it doesn't mean it's good for them. And it also is do you really, if you ask them what their name is, have you even talked to them? You found out what they're actually, what they're actually all about, and where they are in their life journey, or where their family is. Because I had our meetups that we do, there's absolutely no soliciting. It's just connecting and trying to find people that you connect with, and then you go from there. And we had a couple of times where there were people coming, they just came and they went full on pitch fest, and I'm like, whoa, hey, I pulled one person aside and I said, hey, look, you even know their
It's not
names?
that kind of party,
they
right?
do. You got an apartment deal, and they own like several short-term rentals. They're like, if you had asked them about what they were working on, you would have realized that this is kind of the wrong conversation to have. And she just kept going with the whole thing. And I was like, well, let's maybe meet some people, and then you can talk to them tomorrow about it all you want. Find out who's going to be in alignment with you, because that's the hardest thing really with investing or in business anyway, is finding people that you're aligned with. And I think that chess is really a great way to do it. Because you really see what personalities they are and see who's who. Like, what do you notice like right away when what's one thing that you kind of seem to see quite a lot of when you start playing chess with someone?
So, well, one of the things, like, it all depends on how much prep. And I do want to say, I was laughing when you were telling that story, because I was envisioning some guy in a trench coat, doing hey, want to buy a watch? Want to buy a deal?
It's pretty much what it is.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. But when it comes to chess, when you've studied enough, then you can tell if the person has any idea what they're doing by about move 3.
Yeah.
Okay, because now the computers have crunched the numbers enough that they can tell. It's like, okay, well, this has an obvious refutation. This does not. Now the strongest computers, they can get away with just about anything. So like, that's kind of sort of not entirely true. But the thing is, you're not going to learn how to use the computer in such a way where you'll be playing like that. So as a result, like, there's like, realistically, like a typical chess player who's hit the books, they're going to be aware of about 20 different openings, and they won't have studied them, because like, studying them these days means you've memorized like multiple different ways that the game could go 15 to 20 moves deep. And if you're talking the top of the top, it might be 30. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so if that's the case, just even after a few moves, like, I can already tell if you played a lot when you were younger. But one of the things I also do, which that's also a respect thing, I don't do what are called trap openings. So there are some openings, like you probably have seen the Scholar's Mate, which is a 3-move checkmate. I don't even go for that, because it's not a solid opening. It's actually not very good. If you know what to do against it, you are going to get smoked so bad. It's hilarious. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'll send you the video as well. And it actually, the fact that you've had a little bit of a hiatus, it makes this topic quite relevant, I think. I made a video because one of the current concerns is that when people are coming in, we can't have it being completely one-sided. Like, who wants to watch a show where it's like, oh yeah, watch the show. Right, exactly. That's no fun, right? So I've done a couple things to try and change that around, and we'll talk after the show about my ideas for you, some of the newer ones. One that I've done, I had one episode in December where I did a simul. I had 2 different guests on, and I played one game against each of them at the same time. So the chances of me screwing it up were like way higher.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So there's either that, or one thing I was thinking is like, maybe we'll do some chess puzzles. I had, if you know Matt Piccini, he was saying that we should review the games during the interview, but have the game outside of the interview. But I don't know. I think there's something really cool about watching somebody going, like, because it happens to be too, right?
The thing I remember about chess is like, where like, wow, I'm going down.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're just praying that they leave something hanging.
And then that's the tell. And the other person, what's even better sometimes, where the other person doesn't see it, but you see it, and you're like trying to hold that in, like, oh. But I remember that, like, especially like, oh, man, I left that wide open there. And then there's almost like you're trying to figure it out, how to get back out of it. But then it just becomes a cascade of like errors after that, where you just leave yourself. And that can be very telling also with real estate too. Like, if all it takes is a couple little things that maybe you weren't 100% in the beginning, and you're like, it'll probably be fine. No, usually it won't be.
Mm-hmm.
It usually, whenever you say, it'll probably work out, it usually won't. It usually won't.
Yeah. True enough.
And this is one of those things,
Yeah, exactly. But the main thing too is, I've heard horror stories as far as people on GP teams. I have one friend who, fortunately, I was not involved in this deal. This is straight out of like a fiction novel. The deal wasn't doing so well. This person's deal wasn't doing so well, and so one of the GPs decided to show up in person to the property, armed and threatening families to pay their rent. And so I take it the dude got arrested or whatever. I don't know what happened after that, but
you could buy your first investment property in just 30 days with a proven playbook built by a pro with 25 years in the game. It's not just possible, it's a plan. Scott Kidd's complete bundle gives you everything you need. 7 professional tools delivered instantly. No fluff, no guesswork. Just the exact roadmap to your first property. From yacht captain to managing director of capital markets, Scott Kidd has navigated deals most investors only dream about. Now he's handing you his full playbook. If you're a high earner who keeps researching but never pulling the trigger, if you feel overwhelmed by the process, this was built specifically for you. Virtual walkthrough guide and the napkin deal calculator. Inside, the 30-day checklist property locator playbook by box builder, market scorecard, agent vetting script. And right now, free bonus access to all tools, including the portfolio investor clarity tool. Visit investwithscottkidd.com and get the bundle today. Your first property starts now.
Right, but if somebody's got that level of anger issue, it's good to know that over a chess game before hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars are already.
Maybe the guy was just a little misunderstood and he was a little aggressive.
Just a bit, exactly.
A little bit, I'm kidding.
Oh yeah, exactly. I joke about it too.
It's all the families that are, they didn't have like gunpoint. Wow, I never even that's something that wouldn't even cross my mind that, how it only works out one, it's only really going to work out one way, really bad when you come up with an idea like that.
Except for the 3 square meals and a place to sleep, probably with a roommate you don't know or don't like.
Well, you won't have to pay rent. You won't have to pay rent ever again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. A tenant's in the exact same situation. But I get it too. Like my first reactions, I had 2 of them at the same time. Was one is the obvious one of holy crap, and then the other one was like you kind of want somebody like that on your team, but you don't. Somebody who.
You want somebody with that level of conviction that they're going to fix the deal, but maybe not that aggressive. You want them to power through everything and okay, maybe we can go and talk to these people, maybe make some payment plans, or maybe we can offer some concessions to fill the rest of it, or maybe we can get some stuff that's more attractive to get in there. Maybe we can charge more late fees. Maybe we can we can do something. But that's like and this goes back. A friend of mine, his uncle or something was in New Jersey, owned a bunch of properties in the 70s, and this is kind of along those lines where the people didn't pay the rent, so in the wintertime they'd just take the door off.
Right, and I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, you can't really do that. And he said, well, one or two things would happen. Either they'd pay the rent or they would leave. But they would say, well, I got to work on the door. It's like, well, probably not. But, that's a bit aggressive too, because, there's probably better ways, but then you're also looking at a completely different element of what was going on in that particular part of New Jersey at that time too. So
right, and of course there are definitely alternatives, and that's the beauty of getting into real estate is you get to hear all these absolutely insane stories, right? I know out in California they had a big squatter problem, and so he doesn't look like a genius, he doesn't sound like a genius, but he sure acts like a genius, because what he does is if somebody's squatting, he gets the owner, who obviously pays them for the service, to make out a lease for him. So he has the legal right to be there. So he moves in and he becomes the worst roommate in the history of bad roommates. So he eats all their food, leaves all sorts of mess, just plays music all night long, just like literally trying to drive them crazy so they'll go out. And the other one he did for bonus points he mentions is because he's basically a licensed private investigator, he comes in armed. So if anybody is on probation, they cannot be in a residence with a firearm.
Yeah, exactly. There's a weapon there.
Yeah. So thinking outside the box right there.
Yeah, because there was one, a friend of mine, Eddie Austin, told me this one. He said they had a property somewhere, I'd say maybe Tennessee or Indiana or something like that there was one of the guys went to check on the property, and he went down there, and there was a guy kind of standing out front across the street or whatever in this yellow building or whatever, and the guy was renting the rooms or because it was a construction site, they were redoing the building. He was renting the rooms to homeless people for like $200-$300 a night, and they would get like 5 or 6 of them in there. And there was a Home Depot down the street. The guy would go cut the key, change the locks in there, and he'd go up there and put them in there. And then he had a whole thing of keys. He had a whole thing system worked out, and said to his partner, "Hey, I might be messing up the story a little bit." And he's like, "Which building was that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's the yellow one." "Oh, good. Ours is blue." It's across the street, because he's like, "Well, we definitely," because they were under construction too. And, so then what they did is they made it well lit, and, and they put security there and stuff like that. But the other place, geez, they were $400 a night or something like that. And there are 5-6 homeless guys in there, and, well, they're not homeless anymore. They got a place. So does that not make them homeless, I guess? But
right.
The detective coming in there, that's a pretty good, because I've known of people that they were doing the house hacking thing where they'd rent the rooms, and if somebody didn't pay or whatever, they just become the worst roommate or whatever. It was awful for the other 2 people living there, but they just made it really bad for those other people.
Oh man, yeah, it reminds me of college.
Yeah, that's true, because there's always the one roommate who always doesn't pay, pays late, or "Oh, come on, I'll get you next time," and they never do, and they just
right,
it's like everyone's
right.
One
of my favorite stories on that, a friend of mine had it, and apparently one of the roommates was using their mouthwash, and they asked a few times, like, "Hey, it's okay if you're using it, just we'll just split on the bottle next time." And the person was really, really adamant, but my friend found out about the situation because they turned around and said, "It's like, hey, you're not using the mouthwash, right?" There's no, it's that other guy. It's like, "Yeah, I know." And I told him, but I'm just telling you from now on, there's been a fluid exchange in my bottle of mouthwash. So if you were using it before, I highly encourage you not to use it in the future. And my friend said, there are few types of revenge quite as sweet as when you know that the liquid in their mouth on a daily basis.
Oh no! Yeah, that is a pretty hectic get back or whatever you want to call it. Revenge.
Yeah. It's just crazy.
Yeah, because when in real estate, like they had. With tenants and residents and stuff, I remember a friend of mine, I can't forget who it was, they were telling me that they had elderly people in there, and it was in Florida, and, people have these hurricane windows that are really thick, you can't hear through them. And I know what it was. The neighbor was a fireman, and he got called to come out there because he wasn't sure, the guy hadn't paid he had paid the rent, but they just hadn't seen him for a while, and he was elderly, and they weren't, his relatives were like, "Hey, we haven't heard from him," and he's on an auto pay for rental or something. He said, "You don't know how many times I've cut through those those hurricane windows to go bust through the window to see the elderly person just sleeping on the couch." I'm like, "Well, what do you do next? Who pays for the window?" "Not us."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think the takeaway is that real estate is a contact sport, but at least that's the benefit of it, right? Like you could invest in stocks, you could invest in valuable like precious metals, things like that. But you can steal precious metals, and stocks can go down to zero. It's pretty unlikely that a place to live will go to zero. But
yeah, but you got to be active, and you got to be active, and you got to be ready to be aggravated or have some hurdles that you have to solve. With the stocks, if something goes wrong with that company, you don't have any involvement. If gold goes up or down, you don't have any involvement in that. But
with all these big companies, these big companies, they all have PR departments. Their whole job is to spin things, so that they sound okay even when they're not.
I mean, look at Enron. I mean, that was an extreme case of hey, everything's fine, and the guy's dumping all. I mean, nowadays you'd find out pretty quickly, like. If they were doing that, and dumped all their stock the day before over time, and then, they all disappeared. And I had friends that worked at Enron, and they did really well when the Enron stock was good. They started in the 80s and finished up around 2000. They went under or whatever it was, but they did pretty well on it. But after that, they lost just about everything from it. But
before that, there was Bre-X, the gold mine that had fake samples of gold dust on it. It's not a new story. Like what's the what was the blood one? Is Theranos or something like that? The one where they said it's like, oh, we're going to do blood tests with just a drop of blood. It's like, and then everybody who works with blood was like, no, that's not going to happen.
No, you can't do that. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that whole thing with the conspiracies and all those things that came out during COVID. Like they're injecting you with all these chips, and like how big that needle would actually have to be for them to be able to do that. They're not quite there yet. It's not like the nano chips, like you see in the movie. They can't.
Right.
It's not the Manchurian candidate or anything like that. They can't.
Yeah. It needs a power source, and your body heat isn't going to cut it. We don't have that kind of.
We don't have that kind of battery. We're what about like 10 watts or whatever. I forget what my friend that's really good at math told me how much it was, how much we actually can create or whatever. But I'm sure my number's way off, but it's probably way less than that. But now this has been really great. I mean, especially I look forward to being on, playing chess with you. I think however you want to do it, because it'll be kind of fun for me. But what's the easiest way for people to find you if they want to find out more about all your podcasts and everything else you work on?
Excellent. So, fortunately, I got this distinct last name, so I'm really, really easy to find online. If you want to reach out to me, the best way to do that is through LinkedIn. I know, Scott, you've been doing amazing things on LinkedIn recently. The content is absolutely top-notch. That's a great way to talk to me, so you can message me, and then as far as the show itself, you can go to chesswithinvestors.com to check out a few episodes, including the ones where I ended up playing against Hikaru Nakamura twice, and those matches are on there. I both have a sample where I grabbed his comments and basically his strategy from his stream, and I applied it to the recording that I was doing at the same time of myself. So you get to see live reaction. It was actually the first time I dropped an F-bomb on the show. I've been able to hold back. I managed to get to, I think it was episode 29 of Chess with Investors before I even let an S-word slip. So, I've been pretty well behaved as a whole, even though I can't do that on bullet chess. If I'm playing fast chess, it's like, oh, there's a blue cloud.
Yeah, whatever comes out, comes out, because I imagine it gets pretty aggressive.
Right, and I just get mad at myself because I'm like, why didn't I see that, right? And of course now I've been able to tone that down a bit because of knowing these different grandmasters and how they'll still make mistakes. But yeah, that's absolutely the way to get in touch. And then of course I've got a couple books like Real Estate is a Scam and Figure It Out on Amazon.com. So if you're just dying for something else to read, Figure It Out is about cultivating attention to detail, if that is an issue for you. And then Real Estate is a Scam. It's the real idea is that a smart person could end up losing their shirt for highly predictable reasons and then walk away and say, it's like, hey, I'm too smart to have made a critical error here, so definitely the whole thing's a scam. It's like, yeah, that's not the case. And I share some things that full-timers do to make sure that they don't lose their shirt for those reasons.
That's definitely, I heard that a lot after '07, '08, '09. It's a scam and everything else. But everyone that stayed in did very well. So
They definitely
it's like
did.
anything else. You have a long strategy, but long-term strategy, I think you'll be fine whether you do stocks and real estate or gold or whatever. Over time, you keep doing it, you're going to be fine. You put the reps in. I mean, look at your chest now that you've done 10,000 hours. You're probably, you do pretty well at it, and you probably get the frustrations come probably in the beginning. But later on, it's not too.
Yep, that's right. And of course, it's nice because they have the statistics on it. So I'm roughly in the 91st percentile. So
Cool.
about 9% of the 200 million chess.com players, are further than I am. But it's a grind, and I'm sticking at it. I use like chess puzzles and things like that the way that some people use smoke breaks. It's like, oh, okay, I got 5 minutes before this next interview. We'll do a couple
Boom, boom,
puzzles.
boom.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks again for coming on, and I look forward to our next one with playing chess with you. That'll be great. Thanks again.
Fantastic, and thanks for having me. This has been great.
Yeah, man. As always, love talking to you. I'm Scott Kidd, the Odd Captain Investor podcast. Just a reminder: best investment you can make is the one you make in yourself. So invest heavily in you. See you next time.